Raphael Schutz Israels ambassadør til Norge siden 2014. Schultz var Israels ambassadør til Spania i 4 år frem til 2001, før han gikk over til stillingen som generaldirektør og sjef for europaavdelingen i israelsk UD. Han har en lang karriere i det israelske diplomatiet siden 1983, og har blant annet også vært stasjonert i Chile. Han er utdannet innenfor historie og statsvitenskap ved Bar Ilan universitetet. La oss ønske hedersgjesten, Israels ambassadør Raphael Schutz, velkommen til podiet. Please.
Thank you for the warm welcome, all of you. It's really heart-moving. It's really impressive. It really feels good to be among so many friends. Although I must say that your words, in a way, I was suspecting that you might have seen my points before. I mean, basically, you've done my job. Anyway, since we are speaking about Israel and about combating anti-Semitism, and I'm here in a forum that does not need to be convinced, maybe I would just try to be concrete and mention some points of relevance that can be translated into action items that can contribute to change the reality, at least here in Norway. We know that there are all kinds of anti-Semitism, new types, old types. Just this week we heard about destroying some Jewish cemeteries in the United States. We hear about attacks, sometimes violent attacks against Jewish centers in different parts of the world. This is what I call the classical anti-Semitism. And the issue with this anti-Semitism is that while it still exists and maybe even on a rise and a source for concern, I would argue that it is generally and widely accepted that this is negative and should be fought against and should be not permitted within, I would say, a civilized discussion or freedom of speech. On the other end, we have what I call the new anti-Semitism, which you also mentioned, a type of anti-Semitism that is frequently camouflaged and is part of a discourse that is trying to present itself as critical towards Israel. And let me be clear, criticism towards Israel is absolutely legitimate, as the same way as criticism towards the acts of any other government are legitimate. We are living in an open society. Governments are taking steps and policies, and people have all the right to criticize these policies. But in the case of Israel, frequently, the line of legitimacy is being crossed. And again, Doug, as you mentioned, I noted the resolution of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, the IHRA, in its last meeting in Bucharest last May. This is a group constituted by 31 countries, among which Norway is a member. And it says, exactly like you said, that anti-Semitism, among other things, is denying the Jewish people the right of self-determination, by claiming that the existence of the State of Israel is a racist endeavor, among other things, applying double standards by requiring of Israel a behavior not expected or demanded of any other democratic country, using the symbols and images associated with the classic anti-Semitism, like claims of Jews killing Jesus or blood label to characterize Israel or Israelis vis-à-vis the Palestinians, drawing comparisons of contemporary Israeli policy to that of the Nazis, etc., etc. So these are clear cases of anti-Semitism, but unlike the classical anti-Semitism, these are frequently heard in the mainstream debates. They are perceived to be part of a legitimate discussion. They are within the boundaries of freedom of speech. They are not singled out as classical anti-Semitism is, as what they should be, other expressions of anti-Semitism. And we have a very vivid and current example next week in different places in Europe and in other parts of the world too. We are going to be witness to what is called the Israeli Apartheid Week. This is mainly going to take place in universities, almost always in different universities in the West. And this is part of the big lie that has also anti-Semitic features as presenting Israel as a country, as an apartheid state, etc., etc. Now, these events are still permitted within the freedom of speech. Sometimes they are even supported directly or indirectly by some governments. Now, in Great Britain, a country that, as Norway, also as Israel, is member of the IHRA, some universities, because of the adoption of the new definition of anti-Semitism, have abolished, have called off the events of the Apartheid Week in their campuses. This is a beginning. And my wish is that in Norway too, in different universities, most of all in Oslo where it took place last year, but also in other universities, there will be no Israeli apartheid week in the future, because not having it is not an act against freedom of speech, it's an act against anti-Semitism.
Yes.
Adding to what you've said, I must remind you of a declaration of the previous Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, who in his last days at office said openly, the UN has an obsession, a disproportionate obsession with Israel. It dedicates far more time and energy to deal with Israel. It singles out Israel, and at the end of the day, it's not only unfair towards Israel, it also doesn't do any good service to the Palestinians. The only thing I regret about is that he waited 10 years in the office to say it. But we should be aware of what he said and be very much, I would say, attentive and call the attention of others to the fact that the UN is blatantly used as a platform to create this new anti-Semitism. Here in Norway, we have also seen the expressions of the new anti-Semitism in the form of some resolutions that call to boycott Israeli products that are manufactured in the settlements. This is I include that within the framework of anti-Semitism because, again, it is a very good example of singling Israel out. We have a conflict, a territorial conflict. There are about 200 territorial conflicts in the world. No other of these 200 territorial conflicts is being brought to a discussion in a municipality in Norway or in other countries. We are the only case. So this is discrimination against the Jewish state, hence anti-Semitism. Now it is true, and it is a positive, and it is a motive for, I would say, satisfaction to see that in the last years the government of Norway has taken a lot of positive steps in order to improve bilateral relations with Israel. There is a positive atmosphere. There is a climate that making business between Norway and Israel is a good thing, as was demonstrated clearly by the signing of the bilateral agreement between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Foreign Minister Brende in Israel last January. But still, we have a lot to do. So my message to this forum is maybe to concentrate in the following 4 points. One is making the Norwegian government renew in the clearest way the notion that it supports the idea of Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. This is point one. Second point is, and maybe it's a derivative of the first one, that politically speaking, when we speak about the solution for the conflict between the territorial conflict between Israel and the Palestinians, the terms that should be used will not be the two-state solution, but rather a solution for two states for the two people. Because when we speak about only two states, it has no logic. The territory is small. Why should we have two states over there? Unless there are two people. And this is something that the Palestinians are trying to run away from, and we shouldn't let them, and the government of Norway shouldn't let them. The third point is a more determined and outspoken policy against boycott. I just mentioned it. It cannot be that institutions in Norway that openly support boycott to Israel will enjoy governmental money. I repeat it, it's not an issue of freedom of speech. If you are in favor of boycott, you are in your right to hold this opinion, but you cannot expect to enjoy governmental money to support your activity. And this is something that as voters, as Norwegians who have a voice, who have the right to demand accountability from your government must make clear. Not with our money, not with our vote, boycott against Israel. Last but not least, thanks. Last but not least, we should demand a more assertive and not business as usual approach by the government of Norway towards Iran. If there is today one danger, existential danger, real danger to Israel in the Middle East, it is by the government of Tehran. It is by this fanatic combination of religious radicalism and fundamentalism with an aspiration to acquire nuclear capacities and at the same time promoting and supporting terrorism and extremism in every point in the Middle East, but also in the other continents. Now, because of the agreement, we believe it was a bad agreement between the West and Iran on the nuclear issue, all the governments of Europe practically, with no exception, took a position of business, at least in the economic field, business as usual with Iran. And I say, guys, you are moral people. I say to the government, Iran is making military tests. It launches missiles saying in Hebrew, this missile is going to destroy the state of Israel. It supports terrorism in every corner of the world. It is determined that Israel, a UN member, will be destroyed and vanishes from the earth. It's the only case in which one UN member threats another UN member to be destroyed. It denies the Holocaust systematically. I don't even mention the offenses, the consistent and large-scale offenses of Iran against human rights, against its own population. All of that, and you governments are running and rushing to Iran to do business because of the agreement on the nuclear issue. Do you believe that this makes it right? So please, as Norwegians against, talk to your government, talk to your parliamentarians, and make them understand that a business-as-usual approach with Iran is wrong. It's wrong from the moral point of view, and it's wrong for the security of Israel and the world. Thank you very much.